Trey Yingst is in Kyiv, Ukraine, with the latest. And Trey, it's been quite a day. What's the latest?
Yeah, good evening. We have heard air raid sirens once again in the Ukrainian capital of Kyiv and explosions in the distance. It's not just this city, though. The second largest city in Ukraine, Kharkiv, coming under attack today from heavy Russian bombardments. Freedom Plaza, a square in the central part of Kharkiv, hit with 2 Russian cruise missiles, killing at least 6 people. This leading Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky to call the event a war crime, and he's calling on the international community to hold Russia accountable and reconsider NATO alliance and the Ukrainian people. Take a listen to what he had to say today.
As far as a no-fly zone is concerned, it would have helped a lot. This is not about dragging NATO countries into war. The truth is, everyone has long since been dragged into war, and definitely not by Ukraine, but by Russia.
Zelensky speaking today from a bunker in the Ukrainian capital of Kyiv. Much like the civilians here, he is waiting underground or at least undercover in an effort to stay away from the Russian air campaign. Those who can leave the Ukrainian capital are doing so. We saw them today at the train station, some heartbreaking scenes. A familiar scene unfolds in the Ukrainian capital. Uri Gretsenko says goodbye to his daughter and granddaughter. They're evacuating to the city of Lviv, near the Polish border.
We need to leave our homes to make our children safe. I never thought it would be like that. It's not a joke, but hell.
Like thousands of Ukrainian men, Uri will stay and fight as the Russian invasion continues.
My family, my daughter and granddaughter are leaving. I'm staying as I'm in the territorial defense.
People here are running out of time. There's a real understanding that Russian forces could surround the city in a matter of days. So the central train station in Kyiv is a major evacuation point for people looking to go west. The city remains on edge tonight with a curfew in place and roadblocks set up throughout the Ukrainian capital. Back to you.
Trey, we're going to have some questions for you. I'll kick it off here. I just have a question about another city named Kherson, which is where there was a lot of bravery earlier in the week with one of the soldiers who blew himself up to stop a Russian advance at that bridge there, but apparently the Russians are in Kherson now?
Yes, it's an area in the southern part of Ukraine near Crimea, and it's significant because it allows the Russians to continue that land bridge into Ukrainian territory. We were in this area with the Ukrainian Defense Forces in the southern part of the country just about 3 weeks ago, and it's not very well defended. It allowed Russian tanks and artillery units to move very quickly into this part of the country. But what's significant is that if the Russians continue their advance in this part of Ukraine, it will allow them to flank up here to the capital of Kyiv and allow them to attack the city from multiple directions, which would be extremely difficult to defend.
Jesse Waters, do you want to go next?
Sure, Trey. So if Russian forces surround the city, what kind of preparations are underway inside Kyiv to prepare, stockpiling food, stockpiling water and weapons? Because after you're surrounded, nothing's getting in or out.
Absolutely. We've seen it in recent days, the lines around the block at grocery stores, but also the lines around the block at police stations. Civilians picking up any weapons they can find, getting ready for the Russian tanks and artillery units to start rolling into this city. What we've seen, interestingly enough, today is that people are using anything they can to block the roads. There are checkpoints every single block, and if they don't have enough concrete barriers, they're pushing large objects into the street. So at one checkpoint, we saw a piano that had been dragged across the road and put into the middle of the street. It gives you a sense of the Ukrainians and their resilience and what they're using, everything they can to stop the Russian advance.
Judge Janine?
You know, Trey, we've been talking about this 40-mile Russian convoy that is entering Ukraine. Why is it that no one has attacked that convoy with a Hellfire missile or some kind of a drone with a Hellfire missile on it?
The Ukrainians simply don't have enough air power to take out a convoy this large, and the international community doesn't want to get involved at risk of the Russians counterattacking, and then this would trigger Article 5 of NATO and draw in a lot of countries to this fight. What's significant, though, about this convoy, it is coming in near the Antonov air base, an air base that sits just outside of the city limits of Kyiv. And it was a place central to fighting when this invasion first started. But now that the Russians control this area, they're likely to start their ground invasion and offensive into this city from the northwest. And when that happens, the Ukrainians are going to be hit pretty hard from that direction. And it's part of the reason they're hoping that Russian forces don't make a quicker advance on the city from other directions, because they'd have to spread out their forces and it would significantly weaken the defense forces here in Ukraine.
Right. I understand that it has to be, you know, that we don't want to do it from the air to the ground. But are you saying they have no Hellfire missiles, no drones, that doesn't have to come from the air?
They do have drones, and they also have missiles. They've taken out a number of Russian units along different convoys, and they've been actually quite successful with the anti-tank missiles. It's part of the reason one of the main requests right now from the defense minister in Ukraine is receiving more anti-tank missiles. Another significant point has to do with the skies. Everyone thought early on in this conflict that the Russians would control the skies, as their air force is nearly 10 times the size of Ukraine's. But so far, they haven't. The Ukrainians have used air defense systems to shoot down not only helicopters, but also fighter jets in this battle.
Thank you.
Before we go to Harold, I just want to point out that there's this new video that we are showing you on the screen. It's a very different day today than it was yesterday with this additional damage that you're seeing. It is unlike what we've seen in Europe since World War II. Harold Ford Jr., do you have a question for Trey?
I do. Trey, very quickly, first off, thanks for your bravery and great reporting. We heard today that a second meeting between the Russians and Ukrainians either had taken place, was scheduled to take place. Any sense if there's an altering in Putin's ask of Ukraine, or the Ukrainians, led by this brave president of theirs, is willing to accept something, or he's asking for something differently in light of the pressure that Kyiv seems to be under this evening?
There will likely be another meeting between the Russians and the Ukrainians in the coming days. But what's important to remember is that the Russians often promise things on the ground and then act very differently with their military. We saw really a stark contrast in the way these two sides were dressed when they met along the border of Belarus. The Russians showed up in suits and ties, and the Ukrainians in battle fatigues. We also got some more information from the French, because they spoke with President Putin of Russia, French President Emmanuel Macron, on the phone with him this week. And it really gave us a sense of how unrealistic the Russian demands are. They would like Ukraine to give up all of their weapons and then recognize an area of land called Crimea that was annexed by Russia back in 2014. These are both non-starters for this entire conflict and any sort of peace process that would come out of these conversations.
Brian Kilmeade.
Well, Trey, a couple of things. Kharkiv has been under assault. It looks like it's been totally surrounded in a city that was known to be, there's a lot of Russians there. They thought it was pro-Russian. Doesn't seem to be. There's reports out of there that they're actually going for civilians. They've changed from taking on fighters to aiming at civilian targets. Have you heard that? And how does that make you feel, knowing that there's a 40-mile caravan about 10 miles away from you guys with the same intention?
The Russians claim they aren't targeting civilians in Ukraine. They're lying. They target civilians all over the world. In Syria, you can see thousands of civilians have been killed by Russian strikes, and it is part of the playbook to instill fear in the population as they move forward with these attacks. And it's unfortunate to see such a level of human casualties and such a human toll taken in this conflict so far. But the reality is they are targeting civilian areas. We have not only seen it in Kharkiv, the second largest city, but also here in the capital of Kyiv over the weekend. A Russian missile slammed into an apartment building, killing at least 2 people. They've shelled areas where there are only civilians living. So it is part of this campaign. And I think the concern, and it's one of the biggest concerns we have to remember, is that as President Putin slows this operation, as we have seen in recent days, and he faces this very fierce resistance, he may resort to hitting more civilian areas in an effort to try to bring the Ukrainians to their knees. And the reality is they say they will fight back no matter what. It's part of the reason you've seen Volodymyr Zelensky, the Ukrainian leader, try to galvanize the civilian population and the army at the same time, because he understands this will be a fierce and bloody battle. And when a convoy that's 40 miles long ultimately makes it to this capital city of nearly 3 million people, it will be bloody urban warfare. Make no mistake about that. There will be a lot of deaths, and it's an extremely difficult situation for the Ukrainian people.
Trey Yingst, stay safe for us. No doubt we'll see you later this evening. We appreciate it.
Hi, everyone. I'm Brian Kilmeade. I want you to do me a favor. I want you to click to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page. This is the only way that I know for sure that you're not going to miss any great commentary, any great news bites, any great interviews coming your way on Fox. You can get it all here on YouTube. So subscribe right now.